Hi, I'm Arvad Barnay, a trainer for Academy of Experience. This is a podcast of Academy of Experience, an NGO active in the field of youth work, training youth workers and actively using outdoor education. The podcast is called Forrás, source in Hungarian. We invite youth workers, trainers, coaches, facilitators, and outdoor professionals. I'm really happy to introduce Lena Conlan to you because Lena has a lot of experience as an outdoor educator and she teaches wilderness first aid on different levels. She has run courses for NOLS. If you're not familiar with NOLS, National Outdoor Leadership School provides expeditions, learning programs that take place in wilderness, in remote areas where you hardly meet any people and you are away from civilization. In these programs, you can learn to be well in nature. You learn about yourself, how you handle challenges, adversities, how you can be a good member of a group that faces these challenges. So at the end of the day, you learn about yourself as a leader and you can become a better leader and learn from experience. I really believe what NOLS expeditions mean and what we talk about with Lena in these first two episodes of the podcast are great examples of learning by doing. We have Lena Conlan for 2 episodes, each 1 hour long. We cover topics like outdoor education, long expeditions, how they lead long expeditions, leave no trace, wilderness ethics, also how Lena saw the change in the environment while she took part in various expeditions all around the world, and also how they prepare for this new situation with COVID-19. Now, without further delay, let's start the episode. So if I were to introduce you to someone, I would say come on, do you want to listen to a woman who had 20, 30, 60, 90 days of expedition experience, sea-kayaking expedition experience, a lot of outdoors wilderness expedition experience all around the world and teaching wilderness first aid, then you have to talk to Lena and listen to this conversation. So the question comes, how did you end up doing this? Because it's not a usual career path to be on sea or out there for 60 days, or which is the longest?
Right. Yeah, 60 days is the longest expedition I've led. Yeah. So I grew up on a YMCA youth sailing and outdoor camp in Sweden. And I got really, really cold when sailing. And I had a couple experiences where the sailing boat capsized. And I didn't really like that at all. And I didn't like speed. So I took to canoeing and the sea-kayaking instead. And then as life goes on, I met a lot of friends who were into rock climbing. And that became my big passion. And I climbed every weekend during my years in college. And I was doing mountaineering in Europe and in Scandinavia. And after my university studies, I studied both religion and elementary school. So I have a degree in elementary school, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, kids. But anyway, after I finished up college, I went to the U.S. to work for a big YMCA camp in northern Wisconsin. And I went on a 30-day long canoe expedition in northern Canada. And I just loved every day of that. And then I stayed in the U.S. and I went climbing in Yosemite, in Joshua Tree, in the North Cascades, in Colorado, in Arizona. And then I thought, okay, it's time to go home. I got to put my university degree to work. I got to start teaching elementary school kids. So I got a job way up northern part of Sweden, and loved teaching these kids. But after one semester, 4 months, I said, I think I'd rather go and camp for a living. I want to be an outdoor educator for life. So I took the NOLS instructor course This was 1986. That's a long time ago. 1986. And the instructor course is 35 days long. And we basically backpacked through the Wind River Mountains in Wyoming, USA. And my pack was so heavy. It weighed 40 kilo. We had food, we had climbing gear, we had fishing gear, we had books, we had, of course, all the tents and the, all personal clothing and whatnot. And I thought I was going to die carrying this heavy pack. But it was a really, really interesting experience for me. And after that course, I passed and I started to teach for NOLS. NOLS stands for National Outdoor Leadership School. And I was lucky. My first contracts were in Mexico. And I taught one backpacking course in northern Mexico. And then I taught a climbing course in Mexico. And then one of the sea-kayaking instructors got hurt. And they asked us climbers if anyone knew how to kayak. And I'm like, pick me, I know how to kayak. I kayak back home at camp. So I got offered to come down to southern part of Baja California in Mexico and be part of an instructor team leading sea-kayaking expeditions. And basically after that, all I did was sea-kayaking for NOLS. Yeah.
For how long time?
Yeah, so I worked for full-time from 1986 to 1996, and most NOLS expeditions are 30 days long. So I have done so many of these 30-day long expeditions in remote areas in Mexico, in Alaska, in Chile, Patagonia, Chile, and in Canada. I also later on became the NOLS sea-kayaking program coordinator, and I was responsible for program development, staff training, risk analysis, equipment, and just making sure that our sea-kayaking program at all these different places around the world was solid and safe, but adventurous and educational.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, we have such a short time. I mean, okay, but yeah. it's a good, let's put it like teaser. Okay, we could talk about a lot of different things.
Yeah. May I mention a few more things?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. So when you guide for a living and you take youth and adults out on camping expeditions to remote areas, not only do you have to have the technical skills of camping and whatever the skills are for the mode of transportation, which for me was mostly sea-kayaking, but you also need to take care of people if they get hurt or sick. So NOLS always asked everyone to have at least the 10-day Wilderness First Responder certification. I took it one step further and took the month-long Wilderness Emergency Medical Technician course. And during this time, we worked, my husband and I worked full-time for NOLS. We were either Wilderness First Responders or we were Wilderness EMTs, depending on. But then in 1995, after 10 years of full-time with NOLS, I started to get really homesick. And I wanted to come back to Europe, to Scandinavia more. So my husband and I actually left NOLS and we started to run our own company. And that's Crossing Latitudes. And Crossing Latitudes offered sea-kayaking trips in Sweden, Arctic Norway, Finland, Alaska, Mexico, Greenland, Honduras, Greece, Croatia, and I got to paddle in northern Indonesia as well. But then, of course, our Scandinavian staff, they also needed training in wilderness first aid. And I thought, well, how hard can it be to teach that? So I took the instructor course for what was called the Wilderness Medicine Institute, and I became an instructor for the Wilderness Medicine Institute. The very same year, NOLS bought the Wilderness Medicine Institute, And suddenly I was back working for NOLS again. And that's now after 15 years of running sea-kayaking expeditions with my own company, I now mostly teach for NOLS Wilderness Medicine. Yeah. So that's my job nowadays, arranging and teaching wilderness medicine courses.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And you do like 2-3 day courses, short ones, longer ones. Could you tell a bit about that so people can have an idea?
Mm-hmm. We teach basic wilderness first aid courses. Those are 2 or 3 days long. We like to have them 3 day long in Europe because we always include CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. We also teach wilderness advanced first aid courses. They're always 5 days long. And that's what we did with your group in Hungary last year, 5 days. Yeah. We also teach the 10 or 11 day wilderness first responders, which is mostly outdoor guides and instructors and outdoor educators that take those courses. And then we also teach the wilderness first responder refresher courses because wilderness first aid or any kind of medical topic, it's not stagnant. It's always evolving, it's always changing. So you need to update your skills and keep your skills sharp. So we got 4 different types of course types in Europe. Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Also, this is also one of the reasons I thought it's good to talk, because I think people need to know about this part of your work also. And still coming back to the expedition experience also, that's also something that I think is great value to share a bit of it, because NOLS is not so much known in Europe, right. Like widely known. And when I think about NOLS, I think about people who have long years of experience all around the world, preparing people to be able to navigate safely in the wilderness. Not professional guides, but everyday people who join the courses, and they become very much prepared. So I became very curious. How do they do that? I mean, like, that's amazing. And it's also a question like not only about technical skills, but you need to be really good at working with people, managing people, and also very, very skilled in your field, like in your case, kayaking or climbing. So, yeah, when you joined, how did you prepare for this, and what changes did you see? Maybe these are 2 questions. Like, what changes or development do you see in the field that makes NOLS so much able to do this?
So NOLS started 1965 by a fellow named Paul Petzold, and it's not Petzold like in headlamp. His name is Petzold, and his goal was to train outdoor leaders. And he felt strongly that if you are going to be an outdoor leader, you need to know how to handle various situations in the wilderness. And you can't learn that over a weekend trip. So therefore, traditionally, NOLS expeditions were all 30 days or longer. Nowadays, we offer, 14 days long NOLS expeditions, and even we have week-long alumni NOLS trips. But traditionally, and still, the classic NOLS expedition is 30 days. As the name, the National Outdoor Leadership School, leadership is the core of our program, and that's about self-leadership. How do I take care of myself? How do I react to things that happens? How can I be a positive influence? How can I inspire others? Do I have the skills needed to take care of myself, to take care of others, etc.? So it's a lot of self-leadership. And then we have peer leadership, which is basically being a leader among friends. And that could be the very, very hardest things. Because when you're out with friends and something goes wrong, it's hard to step up and say, I think we should do this, because your friends might say, no, I don't think so. No, we should do this. And then you argue, and then suddenly you're not friends anymore. So there's a lot of focus on peer leadership. And then, of course, we also have leadership of the larger group, where you, together with one other person, gets to be in charge of the larger group. Maybe plan a day or 2 or 3, anything from when are we getting up in the morning, when are we going to take breaks, how far are we going to hike or bike or climb or kayak today, and where are we going to make camp, what's a safe place to make camp, etc., etc. So NOLS focus a lot on leadership skills. Yeah. And then, of course, like you mentioned, technical skills, right? It's hard to be the leader if you can't, if you don't have the skills. If you're always the last one packing your backpack, if you're always the last one getting your kayak down to the water, if you're struggling with pitching your tent, or you burn the rice every meal, then folks are quickly going to lose trust in that you can lead them safely. So NOLS focus a lot on technical skills. And depending on what kind of NOLS expedition it is, sea-kayaking was my thing, but NOLS offer backpacking expeditions, climbing trips, mountaineering expeditions, rafting and whitewater paddling, sailing, horse packing, skiing. You can go snowboarding for 20 days on a winter expedition.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question because it's not a secret. I've taken some courses with you, and that's why we're talking. And after the courses, I just went online and Googled everything. Like, come on, what do they do, and what is this long expeditions? And it's quite hard to imagine for someone in this small country in Europe, in Hungary, what does it mean you can be on expedition for 20, 30 days, snowboarding or backpacking? So how does it look like? Can you tell a bit about that for someone who haven't experienced anything like this, or someone who can just picture it, okay, they go for 30 days nonstop, or what's that?
Right. Yeah. If you happen to take a NOLS expedition, the first day is a lot about what equipment to bring. And the instructors will look through everything you brought according to the equipment list. And we basically count your underwear, the socks, and say, you don't need this, you don't need that, no, you need more of that. We really get into details in what you need. We're not a survival school. We think that it's much better to be well prepared, but we also know that the more stuff you bring that you don't really need, the harder the trip is going to be to keep track of all this stuff and carry it or pack it in your kayak or whatever. So the first day we focus on making sure everyone has the right equipment. We also focus on the food. Depending on what type of expedition, you need to understand how many calories you're going to burn. Obviously, if you're doing a sea-kayaking trip in Mexico in September, when it might be very warm, you're probably not going to burn as many calories as a winter expedition in Alaska where you're climbing mountains. Mm-hmm. So pounds per person per day. And if you look at all that food, how much needs to be protein, how much is sugar, how much is carbohydrates, how much is drink mixes, how much cheese, how much goodies, how many Snicker bars do we need? So everyone learn the details of figuring out food. And then the NOLS rations food room have already kind of decided, and everyone gets to pull all the food. And then later on, we have what was called a food identification class, because milk powder can look the same as mashed potato powder. And we have something that we call electric cheese, which is cheese powder. But that could also
cheese?
look, it just looks like the orange ball behind you is the same color of this cheese. But you can also have a drink mix that looks the same orange color, right? And you don't want to mix those up and make a cheese drink mix when you have planned to make a orange drink mix, right? So we have this food identification class. The first day you also teach people how to pitch the tent, how to start the stove safely, and all those things. And a lot of people have maybe never slept in a sleeping bag and in a tent. So there's going to be the basic stuff. Am I going to sleep well? Where am I going to go to the bathroom? Am I going to make friends? And I'm going to have fun on this expedition. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the 4 basic needs that we all need to know from start, that yes, you're going to have fun. Yes, you're going to make friends. Yes, you're going to be safe and sleep well. And yes, we'll teach you where to go to the bathroom, and you're going to eat great food,
So people can relax and
exactly.
Not worry that much.
If you're stressed out, you're not going to be a happy camper for the first few days, and you're probably not going to pick up on the small things that you need to learn in order to be safe. Yeah. So anyway, all those things is kind of what I refer to as the 7 P's. And you heard about these 7 P's before: prior, proper, planning, prevents, poor performance. That the more prepared we are before we depart, the greater trip we're going to have. Accidents will still happen. We're still going to get lost, probably. Things might go wrong. But, if we're not prepared at all, that's going to happen all the time. Now, hopefully we can deal with what comes our way if we're prepared. So.
Yeah, and maybe with more severe consequences also.
Yeah, exactly.
Not prepared. Yeah. And just a question. Yeah. Like you mentioned, food. Like, generally, I'm amazed by this building from small building blocks at base camp. I imagine it like that. Like they arrive, we haven't started yet, but you learn about the building blocks of the expedition, and at the same time, you get less worried if you haven't been to any expedition before.
Right. Yeah.
And still, you get a lot of new information. For example, regarding food. Do you have any experience with expeditions affecting or having an impact on people's eating behavior or attitude towards eating and food?
Right. Way back when NOLS first started, they shot a moose on every expedition. And Paul Petzold taught people how to shoot the moose, how to slaughter the moose, how to take care of the meat, etc., right? Whoa. But the more expeditions, the more moose were shot, the less moose were in the area. And of course, we don't want to waste any food, right? So after a year of that, they decided maybe killing moose was not the way to go. It's better that we bring food with us instead. And of course, we can always add to our food by picking berries or fishing or whatever. So many of the NOLS courses, we don't rely on food that's out in the nature, but we teach our students what you can eat, what you should not eat. And many NOLS expeditions teach people to fish. Now, of course, nowadays people have many more food preferences. Some people are vegetarians, some people are vegans. There are a lot of food allergies. So the folks that work at the NOLS headquarters, they are experts in finding great camping food for all these different groups, because eating well is really important. We don't eat freeze-dried food. We learn how to make cinnamon buns. We make pizza. We make casseroles like lasagna. We do Thai food. We do Indian food. We do spaghetti and whatever, right? So we, and of course, that's easier on a sea-kayaking expedition where you don't have to worry so much about the weight. On a backpacking or mountaineering, you might have rations coming in. Maybe some of those rations were put in last year, and the food has been sitting for 6 months in the safe containers buried in the snow, and then you have to dig up these containers.
Wow.
And there's your flour, so you can make bread. There's your frozen butter, so you can
So it's like finding some chest, like wow,
exactly.
secret
Yeah.
treasure chest. And
because food is really important, and if you only eat freeze-dried food, after a week, you don't even know if this is the breakfast package or lunch package or dinner. If you just pour hot water in and let it sit for 10 minutes, and it all start to taste the same. And food is also, of course, a community thing. The little tent group of 4 people, they cook together, they eat together. That's time to reflect how things are going for each individual. It's time to share and laugh and and learn how to be a good chef in the outdoors.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a valuable skill. And do you see any change in attitude or any impact of all this experience that people get towards eating? So what I mean is, like, if I live in a city, I might not eat as well or as good food as I might do in the expedition, or I may think that I need to eat all the time or very often. And now what I hear, I'm not an expert on the topic, but I hear that the positive impact of fasting is good for the body. So the timing of the food intake is also a thing that could change after expedition. That's my supposition. I don't know.
I'm not 100% sure what people do when they come back. But I know during an expedition, because you first have seen all the food for the whole expedition, and then you see what we have for the first 8 days, and then we're going to get this for the next 10 days, and then we're going to get another ration for 12 days. Then we kind of know this is what we have for the next 8 days. And that's what each tent group has. And they have to figure out, do we want to pig out and eat everything the first 2 days and then starve for 5 days? Well, that's not so smart, because then you're not going to have the energy and be happy, right? So the instructors will teach the students how to ration the food and make good decisions. You look at different combinations, what makes a good full protein that makes us strong. When we have a layover day, you probably don't need to eat as much, right? And it's good, healthy, nutritious food. And I like to think that when people come home and back to the front country, they will carry some of those ideas with them and know that they can get by on much less food and still be a happy person, and maybe stay away from a lot of fast food or fat food unless they need that fat for staying warm and keep the energy. So I think we're teaching food habits for life. But everyone, when we come back from a trip, we just crave whatever to go and eat. But
it's not the way to keep up. And coming back to the expedition, okay, so you prepare people, and how to picture this? What does it mean to be on the expedition?
Yeah, so I mentioned that we teach leadership skills. And at NOLS, we don't believe that the person with the longest college education or highest degrees or best paid job is necessarily the best leader. We believe that leadership is something you can learn. I truly believe that one of the best leaders is the person who, after a long, tough day, still has good energy, can help the other expedition members to put up their tents or organize the gear, start the stove, and cook a great meal, right? So when we say that we teach leadership skills, it's not just experience and what actually happens. It's actually also classes. So we have sit down and listen to me type of classes. And then we mentioned the technical skills. So you might come to camp and then we're going to work on knots, or we're going to learn how to perform an Eskimo roll or self-rescue, or how to tow someone, or how to put in a strong top rope with several attachment points and safety. So when we blaze someone, it's no issues. So we work on all these technical skills. And then we have another topic that's called expedition behavior. And I think that's what people don't recognize that they're going to learn most. I mean, it is great fun to just be outside and go sea-kayaking all day long, and you see fun things splashing around you, orcas or seals, or you see a moose swim by, or in Alaska you might see bears on the shore, or whatever, right? So traveling through the wilderness is its own spectacular, enjoyable thing. And everyone comes because leadership is in our name, and they know they're going to learn the technical skills. But the topic that we call expedition behavior, people don't really think about. And expedition behavior is basically group dynamics. There will be conflict. You're not going to love everyone every day on the trip. There's going to be conflict, and you need to solve the conflict. If a trip is just a week, I can put behind me the irritating thoughts, it drives me crazy every time he does this, whatever. And, I can't believe he just ate all the Snickers. I mean, I wanted a Snicker bar today, and now they're all gone, and you ate them. I can put that behind me and not deal with it, and that's okay. And then I go home and, I'll whine about it. Yeah. But if you're out on several week-long trips, you rely on each other. You have to trust each other. You have to create respect for each other. You don't have to love each other for life, but you need to work together. So group dynamics, how do I function in the group? What am I doing that drives people crazy? How do we handle these conflicts? How do we move on? How do we create respect and trust and care for one and another? So that's a big topic, and that's a topic that we both do classes on, and that we just experience and learn from every day. It could be that we do debriefs every afternoon when we come to camp, either a self-reflection debrief, just me and my thoughts, or it could be a peer, our tent group reflection debrief, or it can be the large expedition, all 15 people do a debrief together and get to chat on what happened today, how do we deal with it, what did we learn, how do we move on, what are we going to do tomorrow. So that's a big part.
So it's a huge thing, because people join for a long experience. You cannot get through it and just bite on a stick and it's gonna be over. But you're really in it as a whole person, and you really need to be vulnerable because you rely on each other. So it's something very hard and something very soft at the same time, because you're very human there. And my question is coming from this direction, that people sometimes send these postcard kind of sentences like life starts out of your comfort zone and you need to go out there, and it sounds easy from the couch, from home. And sometimes when people are invited like this, or easily pushed out to live such experiences, it can be very sudden or too much, or it can be even sometimes called pushing, with the justification that you need to really suffer and it's going to be really good. And what I hear from you is not really this. It's something that speaks about caring for people, that they prepare for something really challenging from which they can grow. How do you do that? How do you prepare people to perform this expedition behavior? So what do you see? I don't picture it like you tell it all. Obviously, you need to go to a course, but what do you see as crucial points?
Yeah. So for what comes to mind is an expedition I led in Prince William Sound, Alaska, many years ago. And the very first day, we put participants together in smaller, what we call tent groups. And there was a married couple. And sometimes instructors decide to split a married couple from start, but me and my co-instructors decided to keep this married couple together. And then there was a younger person, I think he was only 15 or 16 years old, and we put him in this team, and then we had a woman in the mid-20s. So the couple was in the 50s, lady in the mid-20s, and then this younger fellow, 15, 16 years old. And they got angry. They were not happy. The married couple said, we didn't come on this expedition to spend time with teenagers. We have teenagers at home. That's why we left. This is why we're here. We don't want to be with our teenagers. The young kid said, I don't want to be in this team. I'm not here to spend time with old farts and my mom and dad. I have a mom and dad at home. And we said, well, this is the team there is, and you guys will be teammates for this first 8-day period, and then we're going to change. All right. So we do all these cooking classes. One instructor works with each team to make sure that they understand the stoves and the food and can cook and be safe, et cetera, et cetera. And we, as an instructor team, had decided that we're going to cook on fires for the first week. So we only taught them how to use the stoves as a backup. But the idea was to cook on fires because we know there was going to be a lot of driftwood on the beaches where we were kayaking. And it turned out that this kid, he loved to cook on fires. He loved the idea of starting the fire, collecting the firewood, maintaining a good, perfect heat. And he started to crank out pizzas and the cinnamon rolls, and he was just so good at cooking on fires. The married couple were really respectful and allowing him to cook a lot. They loved the whole idea of taking a walk together and get fresh water. They loved putting up the tent together and making it a perfect tent platform and decorating with driftwood or special rocks or whatever to make it homey. And together as a team, these 4 people just became a really strong team. They almost always were the first one to unload their kayaks and get the kayaks up to shore. They were the first one to have the fire going and tent made. They were always in time for the evening meetings or classes. And the lady in her 20s, she wrote a journal and she collected all their stories and shared with a whole group of things that they as a little team had discussed or whatever. And of course, after 8 days, when it's time to switch groups, they did not want to switch groups. They're like, no, we love our group. We work so well together. This is it. We want to stay together. And we're like, nope, that's not this experience. It's time to switch groups. And that could be really hard. And now you have to start over with a honeymoon to be friendly and then have some conflict and solve the conflict and move on through the different stages, right? Wow. So a lot of expedition behavior is just through experience and daring to talk about the issues. And then you also get some information and knowledge or tools from the classes that we teach.
And in the classes, you gave some kind of highlights or inspiration that, guys, this is important part of the expedition, not just the technical part. And also you invite them to use some practices or events, like it's a good idea to sit down after a long day and have a sharing, maybe on your own, maybe with a team. And also you invite them during the expedition. Now it's reflection time or sharing time.
Yeah. We make time for that. So a class could be 30 minutes or something with some practical parts of it. And then we have like, okay, now each group do this. Here's the questions you need to discuss. This is what we expect will come out from this, whether that's a written statement or just their thoughts or whatever. And then after a few weeks of this, some of that self-reflection and peer reflection in your team just happens naturally. So we don't have to schedule time for it. Then we have time for taking the next step and teach things. Wow. Sometimes if you feel like you've been able to teach everything and the group is really strong and you see that care for each other and respect and trust, then an expedition could end with, when I taught for NOLS full-time, we called it a small group expedition. Nowadays it's called independent group travel, meaning that a group of maybe 5 or 6 participants are traveling on their own without instructors. And depending on what the environment is in, they could be out for 2 days, they can be out for 4 days, they can be out for even longer. Because at NOLS, we also have these semester courses, 3-month-long expeditions. And where it could be backpacking, it could be rafting, it could be climbing, it could be sea-kayaking. And you do 3-4 weeks of each activity. And then maybe towards the end, you finish up with a week-long independent group travel. Wow. The instructors are available. We have the communication device. We have a satellite communication device in case something really goes bad. But it's based on that the instructor feel like, yes, this group have come to that point where they have learned all the skills and they can take care of each other.
Yeah. Wow. So they have very, very good preparation and all the equipment and the support from you at their back, but they are on their own in nature and they can have access to you, but maybe they don't get in touch with you throughout the whole thing. Whoa.
We sometimes might spy on them. For example, one expedition that I was part of, the instructor team made camp really high up on a cliff. Took us forever to get up there, but that meant we could see the group paddling by. So we knew that, okay, now group 1 had paddled by. Okay, half a day later, group 2 is coming by. The next morning, we see group 3 coming by. And the groups would know that we are behind them. So in case something happened, they should stay put or they should paddle back. So you need to have a emergency plan that everyone understands in case something happens. Because we don't want people to just lift the phone because they have an issue. If it's a true emergency, they should, definitely use the sat phone or the InReach or the ePerb. But if it's not a true emergency, a life threat, then they should find instructors or another group and help each other out. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And also, this means that you have also an option if communication via these devices fails, they know that you will come up after a certain time.
Yeah, right. That'd be another aspect of these expeditions is, of course, leave no trace. Traveling through in beautiful, remote, wild areas, right? And NOLS runs expeditions in the Southwest in Arizona. They run expeditions in the Teton Valley in Idaho, the Rocky Mountains through Wyoming. We go to Alaska, Pacific Northwest, north of Seattle in Washington State, the U.S. We have trips in Northeast in the Adirondacks Mountains. We go to Patagonia in Chile, East Africa, New Zealand, Northern Scandinavia, India, Yukon Territory, and Canada. So, I mean, we're talking pristine wilderness environments because the goal for a NOLS expedition is to basically never see anyone else but our group, you know. Mm-hmm. So therefore, it would be hard to run a NOLS 30-day expedition, for example, in Central Europe in the Alps, because there's so many people enjoying the mountains there, right? So we really go to pristine wilderness areas, and therefore leave no trace becomes really important to minimize the impact that we have on the nature. And everyone learns about the 7 principles of leave no trace. Another thing that's big part of our expedition is outdoor ethics. And that's both flora and fauna and learning about the environment that we're traveling through. So I wouldn't say that we become one with environment, but you should at least have an understanding of how this environment is functioning and how animals and plants and weather and glaciers and how everything is depending on each other for thriving. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for mentioning this, because what I really wanted to get to is that you seem to be doing it in a very respectful way. As some, maybe the guest is not a good word for that, but some beings who are part of this bigger thing that we call nature, and not approach it as something to conquer or overcome. Right. And how do you prepare people for this? Practical lectures, lectures or practical classes, or how long does it take? And what also, how to imagine this leave no trace?
Yeah.
How tough is that?
Yeah. I mean, leave no trace is pretty basic. And, for example, prepare and plan ahead is the first principle, so we're not going out into the wilderness thinking, if it gets rainy, we're going to cut down branches and build a shelter. No, we have a tent with us, so we don't have to harm the trees because we don't need the branches to have a shelter. We bring a tent. And the food preparation is the same. We don't need to fish to survive because we have food, but we teach people how to fish in case all the food is lost. If we are traveling through bear country, we teach people how to hang their food between trees or use bear containers. But if we do lose all our food to a bear, then what are the plants that we could eat? What are the berries? How do we fish to get enough energy so we can go back home safely, right? So that's just one principle that you can basically think about every day, plan and prepare for the next move. And then we have things like pack it in, pack it out. If we are able to bring in plastics, that our food is in or whatever, when we have eaten the food and we have this trash, it weighs less. We shouldn't dig it down in a pit in the forest. We should bring it back, right? If I find that, I never used these long johns, I'm not going to just throw them in the woods. I'm going to bring them back because I brought them in with me. So we're always thinking of how to deal with the garbage that we create. Some places you can make a huge fire and burn things on a regular basis. That works well on kayaking expeditions where we find a lot of driftwood, dead and down wood. And in places like a mountaineering expedition, then you're out in the mountains, up high peaks on glaciers and snowfields, you can't make fires. Then you have to carry the garbage with you. Yeah. the biggest impact on nature is our own human feces. So that's a big topic, how to take care of that, where to go to the bathroom. And there are different techniques for that depending on what type of environment you are. I say we have pretty fun classes where we demonstrate, not like actually pull down the pants, but we make it as fun and enjoyable as possible, but also teach the actually scientific aspect of it, how feces break down in certain type of earth or dirt or soil compared to like a sandy environment, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a huge topic, and how to go to the bathroom and hygiene and all that stuff, right? And then, of course, if we are in areas where we want to have fires, then that's another principle. How do you make a fire without making impact? We don't need to have a fire ring in order to have a nice fire. We can do a fire down on the beach in the sand, and then scatter the ashes into the ocean and the fine sand well, so we don't leave any scars, etc. There are other techniques for that too, of course. Another leave no trace principle is to respect wildlife and other visitors in the area. How do we walk on the trail? What do we do if we meet someone? Do we step down trail or uphill if we meet horsepackers? Do we need to be loud on the trail if we're in bear country, maybe? But do we have to sing and do camp cheers the whole time and make noises, which could be very disturbing for other people, including people in our group who is there for the peace, rather than hearing me singing Kumbaya at the top of my lungs. So leave no trace is also just living out there and start to feel that respect and connection with the environment we're enjoying. And then, of course, no one wants to harm what you love.
Yeah.
I hope.
So that's why it's pretty much connected to wilderness ethics.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we carry books. We carry books on this too, so people can read and not just take the instructor's words for it, but to read whether it's inspirational books about the environment or thought-provoking things for the environment. We do games or activities where people get to think a little bit and share or act out or whatever. So I have some old favorites of like, if I gave you $10,000 and you had to give it to some kind of cause that will help the environment, where would you put that money? Or if I gave you a free year of doing, you didn't have any expenses, all food, lodging, travel, everything is paid for, and you could, spend that doing something that's important for you, for the environment, where would you go? What kind of environmental topic or issue or fight would you like to put your energy into? No. And, people have, it's anything from saving old growth forest to finding alternative energy resources, saving the dolphins in the India, or whatever, right? Yeah. If you open up those questions to any kind of cause that's important to you, you might have working with kids who are abused, bringing single parents and their kids out in nature. You might have bigger social causes, but sometimes when you focus on like the environment, I mean, it's amazing what people who have spent a few weeks out in the woods start to think about that is important to them. I have had numerous NOLS expedition students, participants, who years after the trip with me writes me and say, Lena, you can't believe it, but I become an environmental lawyer. I work for this environmental organization as their lawyer, and we fight for whatever.
Wow. Yeah. This sounds like You also go after what people find important. So you are curious about people and ask questions, and at the same time you create programs that help people be connected with nature on a much deeper level, maybe. So that might have an impact. And do you see any change in this, like people's attitude?
Yeah, every organization has Facebook pages, right? And there's a Facebook page called NOLS Alumni, and it's amazing how many people that post pictures from their NOLS expedition from as way back when as in the 70s to as recent as last year, right? And then they write something about how important this expedition was to them, how much they learned about themselves as a person in our society, and the next steps that they are taking. So I think people come and take a NOLS expedition, or maybe just go on a camping trip for themselves for several weeks long, thinking this is who I am. But once you have been out in the wilderness or in the woods for a longer period of time, you get to know yourself in a new way, and you might find that this is really who I want to be. This is who I was in the city, but this is who I want to be as a person. And then when you come home, you keep at least part of that new you with you. And whether that is that you're more open-minded, or you have stronger self-confidence, I can do this, or you have learned skills that you didn't think was possible, or you can handle conflict because you have been forced to handle conflict. So I think whether it's an NOLS expedition or just people going camping for extended period, you change.
And what would you suggest to people, or any advice to people who maybe feel inspired and think about, okay, I want to go outdoors, maybe not start with the hardest expedition they can imagine, but maybe in Europe, maybe in more civilized parts of the world, not in Alaska necessarily. So, okay, if I want to start this, is there a place to look at, or things to keep in mind to be well prepared?
Now, of course, a NOLS expedition is very expensive. It's very expensive. Folks can actually also get college credit to take a NOLS expedition. And I know that there are European participants who've been able to tell their university, I'm going to take this 30-day expedition. We're going to talk about leadership and outdoor ethics, and their professors in wherever in Europe they were said, okay, we can give you X amount of points or credits for this expedition. It's very common in the US, but it's more challenging for the European, right? So of course, NOLS is one thing, but there are numerous different organizations, adventure businesses, and groups that offer wilderness trips. Some commercial outfitters, will take you hiking for a week, or climbing a peak, or biking around Europe, or camping and hiking through England or Scotland or whatever. I mean, there are lots and lots of commercial groups, and there's nothing wrong joining one of those groups as a first. Is this something I like to do? And then we have the youth organizations, we have the scouts, we have all kinds of nonprofit outdoor programs in Europe. I'm not sure what's available in Hungary, but you can add lists to that later on. That you can get involved in. Scout camps, they travel internationally, and they also have scout camps within each nation, where you basically have a base camp, and you camp out maybe for 3 days or 5 nights or a week and do different adventures. So I think just finding a group and going out with them, or finding friends that you trust and know have experience and joining them on a 3 or 4 nights outside. If you join your friends, make sure you don't carry too much stuff, because the more you carry, the harder the trip is going to be, whether actually you have that in your kayak or you have it on your horse or in your backpack. So really think through first, what do I actually need? Do I need to switch underwear every day? No. Do I need to switch t-shirt every day? No. I might do that at home, but when I'm out camping, I'm not going to carry a t-shirt or underwear or socks for every day. I'm going to rotate and I'm going to wash it in the creek or whatever I do, right?
By the way, do you teach washing? Do you teach washing and taking care of
not
clothes?
straight in the creek. I will take creek water in a bucket and go up along the, up on the berm or above the creek where there's sands or little pebbles. I will use a minimum amount of soap if I feel I need soap, and scrub and scrub and scrub. And then I will pour my water up high away from the creek. And then I will go down and get more water to rinse. So for example, on a 30-day expedition, I have 3 underwear. Yeah, and that's fine. Yeah.
And also, I can imagine you also wash with similar techniques the dishes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't want to put any suds into the freshwater streams or the salt water, the ocean either. We want to be up and away from any kind of water source because we don't want to introduce soap or shampoo into these water sources. And even if it's like biodegradable type of soap, it's still going to impact the small animals. And I'm talking the tiny animals that we never think of, the little brittle stars, the little krill, the little tiny bugs that you can barely see, right? That lives right there at the water's edge. When they get that kind of stuff on their body or through the system, that's not good for them. It's easy to think about the cute rabbit or the deer or the tiger that we might come across, but those tiny little bugs, even the viruses that we now hate, coronavirus, COVID-19, some of those things are actually necessary in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually they were here before us, and then they are part of the system.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of huge and maybe cute animals feed on krill, for example.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for listening for the first episode of this podcast. The second part of the conversation is available in the second episode. Please follow us on Facebook or on YouTube. If you find something inspiring or you have questions or comments, please feel free to comment under the video on YouTube or under the links on Facebook. Thank you. Hope to see you back. Goodbye.